The Greedy Squirrel and the Sharing Ants. In a beautiful green forest, there lived a squirrel named Sammy. Sammy had bright brown fur and fluffy tail and a tiny and sharp eye. He was quick and smart, always loved to climb trees, but there was one problem. Sammy was very great. Even autumn, Sammy would gather as many as nuts he could, but instead of collecting just enough for winter, he took more than he needed. He would hide the nuts into the big hole inside the tree trunk and never shared it with anyone. One day, something happened that changed Sammy's life forever. One afternoon, as Sammy was running through the forest, he saw a group of ants carrying small grain of fruits, and the ants were tiny and worked hard as a team. Well, what are you doing? Sammy asked, curious. We are collecting food for winter, said the leader of the ants, Andy. When the snow comes, we won't be able to find foods, so we are looking together to enough store our everyone. Sammy laughed. That's silly. Why work together? I collect food only for myself. Andy smiled. Sharing makes life easier and better, Sammy. When we help each other, we stay safe and happy. Sammy shook his head. I don't need anyone's help. I have my own food, and that's only for me. The ants did not agree. They continued their work and singing happily as they carried their food to their home. Soon winter arrived, the forest covered with snow, the trees stood bare, and no food left on the ground. Sammy sat inside his tree and feeling proud of himself. I have more than enough for the food. I don't need anyone, he thought. But after few days, few weeks, something unexpected happened. One morning, Sammy woke up feeling hungry. He went to his food store and pulled out nuts. But to his shock, it was rotten. He plucked another one, another again rotten. Oh no, Sammy gasped. He checked all his nuts, but most of them had gone bad. It had been so greedy that he didn't notice what storing too many things, nuts in damp place. Now he had almost nothing to eat. Sammy looked outside. The forest was quiet, the wind was cold, and there was no food anywhere. He remembered the ants. Maybe they could help. Feeling ashamed, Sammy climbed down and knocked the ants' tiny home. Andy opened the door. Oh, Sammy, what's bring you here? Sammy looked down. I don't have enough food. Most of my nuts are rotten. Can you please help me? Andy and the other ants whispered among themselves. Then Andy smiled. Of course, Sammy, we always believe in sharing. The ants invited Sammy inside and gave us small grains, sweets to eat. Sammy was touched by their kindness. But I was greedy. Why are you helping me? They asked. Andy patted his tiny shoulder because sharing is the right thing to do and kindness always comes back. Sammy realized his mistake. He had been selfish and ants were generous. They did not think about themselves only, they cared for others too. From that day on, Sammy changed his way. The next autumn, he still collected food, but this time he also shared with others. He worked with ants and helped the birds, became the kindest squirrel in this forest. And do you know what? Sammy was the happier than ever because sharing is not only helping others, but it also makes feels warm inside. Moral of the story is kids, true happiness comes from sharing and helping others, not from greed. So kids, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching.
The peacock's colorful tail. In a lush green forest, when sunlight streamed through the tall trees and a gentle river flowed, there lived a beautiful peacock named Percy. Percy had most beautiful stunning feathers of all the birds in the forest, shimmering in shades of blue, green and gold. When Percy spread her feathers and sparkled in the sunlight, creating a dazzle display left over everyone. But despite of his beauty, Percy often felt unsure about him. He was worried about how others saw him. One day, Percy's friend, a wise old daughter named Tilly, noticed that Percy seemed distracted and worried. Percy, Tilly asked gently, "Why do you look so worried?" Percy sighed, lowering his colorful tail. "Thank you, Tilly, but I didn't feel comfortable and confident as I look." Tilly looked at the Percy thoughtfully. "You are focused on how others see you. But have you ever thought about yourself, that how you yourself see you?" Percy pondered Tiddly's words, but still felt unsure. The next morning, Percy decided that he would try something different. The next morning, Percy decided to take a walk on the forest throughout. He hopped the exploring and beauty of nature, the sunlight dancing on his feather, bright out shade of blue green he hadn't noticed before. Percy smiled, feeling a small spark of pride and appreciation for himself. I do have a beautiful feather. As Percy continued in walking, he met his friend, a little sparrow named Sophie. Good morning, Percy, Sophie chirped cheerfully. You are looking specially happy today. Percy smiled. Thank you, Sophie. I am learning to appreciate myself and it feels good. Percy realized that Sophie had found a joy in his unique qualities. As days passed, Percy spent more time enjoying in his own company and finding beauty in his feathers without seeking approval for others. One day, the forest animal gathered for a celebration. They had decided to hold a little festival by the river where each animal would show off their unique talents. The rabbit would hop in a lively race, the squirrel would perform aerobatic leaps. When Percy arrived at the festival, his friends were excited to see him. Percy, they called out, show us your beautiful feathers. In the past, Percy would have eagerly spread his feathers, hoping for the administration, but the time Percy felt different. He smiled warmly and spread his feathers with joy, not anyone else but for himself. The animals watched the Percy twirled and displayed his feathers. When Percy finished, his feathers cheered and clapped, but Percy no longer needed to praise and feel happy. You look happier, Percy, she said with a smile. Have you found what you were looking for? Percy nodded, his shining eyes with joy. Yes, Tilly, I have learned that true beauty comes from within. Tilly nodded. Self-love is the power of gift, Percy. From that day on, Percy lived his life with joy and pride. Percy's journey taught everyone in the forest that important lesson. Beauty is not just appearances but the way we see and love ourselves. And so, Peacock's colorful tale became a story of self love, reminding all who had heard that beauty truly comes from within. The moral of the story is true beauty comes from loving and accepting yourself. Self love is the foundation of confidence and happiness. So, kids, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching.
The Fox and the Birds, a tale of wisdom and deceit. In a vibrant green forest filled with tall trees and melodious bird songs, there lived a clever fox named Rollo. Rollo was known for his cunning tricks and love for easy food. He often tricked other animals to get what he wanted. High in branches of tall trees in the forest lived a flock of birds led by a wise parrot named Mitu. Mitu was admired for his intelligence and calm nature. The bird relied on him whatever they faced problem. One sunny morning, Rollo looked up at the tree and saw the flock of birds chirping happily as they ate ripe berries. His mouth watered. If I only could have tricked those birds into giving me their food, he thought. Rollo sat under the tree and called out, Good morning, dear birds. You look so happy up there. What a beautiful day it is. Me too, sitting on a branch, looked down slowly and politely. Good morning, Rollo. How we can help you today? Rollo grinned slyly and said, I was just admiring your lovely tree, but I must warn you, I heard a rumor that a woodcutter is coming to chop it down. You should all fly away before it's too late. The birds gasped in fear. A woodcutter? A sparrow squeaked. Me too, however, noticed the cunning smile on Rollo's face and sensed something was not right. Thank you for warning, Rollo, Mitu said calmly. But are you sure about this? We haven't seen or heard any signs of woodcutter. Rollo nodded. Oh, I'm sure. I saw him with my own eyes. If you don't believe me, it's your loss. But I suggest you should leave quickly. Maybe you could leave at your food behind for safety. Mitu realized Rollo's true intentions. He is trying to scare us away, so he had to take our food. Mitu whispered to the sparrows. Mitu decided to teach Rollo a lesson. Thank you for your concern, Rollo, Mitu said. But we are birds. We never leave our tree unguarded. Why don't you stay protect for us? If the woodcutter comes, you scare him away. Rollo hesitated. This wasn't the part of plan. Protect the tree? Me? Meetu nodded. Yes, after all, you care about us, our safety, don't you? We will reward you with some berries in return. Rollo greeted for some berries, reluctantly agreed. All right, I'll guide your tree, but thinking an easy task, the birds prevented to leave, flying a nearby tree and watching Rollo. As soon as the bird were sight out, Rollo started eating the leftover berries. But Mitu had a plan. He called a group of crows and told them to squeak loudly and circle around the tree. Maybe Rollo think the woodcutter is here. The crow began cawing loudly and flying in the circle around the tree. Rollo panicked. The woodcutters must be here, he cried. In his panic, Rollo ran away, leaving the tree and berries behind. The birds returned to their tree, laughing how quickly Rollo fell. And Meetu said, let's call Rollo back and explain why deceit never works. Later, Rollo returned to the tree, looking embarrassed. I thought the woodcutter had came, he said sharply. Meetu replied, there was no woodcutter, Rollo. We tricked you to show how it feels to be deceived. You tried to scare us away from our food, but deceit never makes success. Rollo hung his head. I'm sorry, I was greedy and tried to trick you. I have learned my lesson. Meetu smiled kindly. Apology accepted, Rollo. Remember, honesty and kindness are far more rewarding than deceit. If you ever need food, just ask us. We are happy to share. From that day on, Rollo stopped tricking others and became a more honest and kind-hearted fox. The animals in the forest welcomed him as a friend, and he learned that wisdom and kindness were the best quality to have. The moral of the story is, kids, decide may seem like an easy path, but it always leads to trouble. Honesty and kindness bring true rewards and lasting friendship. So, kids, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching.
The adventurous hedgehog. In a quiet meadow bordered by all trees and colorful flowers, there lived a curious little hedgehog named Henry. Henry was different from other hedgehogs who preferred to stay close to their burrows to explore another only familiar places. Henry, however, was full of wonder and always wanted to know what lay beyond meadow. Every morning, Henry would wake up with a new question in his mind. What lies beyond the big oak tree? He wondered one day. And what is like in the deep forest? He often dreamed of going to an adventure. One sunny morning, Henry decided it was a time to follow his curiosity and explore the world beyond his little meadow. Henry first was stopped at the edge of the meadow near the big oak tree. As he looked around, he noticed a bright red butterfly fluttering through air. Hello there, butterfly, Henry greeted with a smile. Where are you going? The little butterfly. It was gentle. I am off to explore the flowers in the forest. Would you like to join me, Henry? Henry's eyes sparkled with excitement. Oh, yes, I would love to. With the butterfly leading way, Henry ventured into the forest, taking his sights and sound on his new place. As they wandered deep into the forest, Henry spotted a small stream flowing gently through the trees. Look, that's me, he exclaimed, thrilled by his discovery. He watched his reflection touching the water with his little paw and giggling at his rippled. The butterfly smiled. There are many things to discover in the world, Henry. Being curious led us to wonderful places. Henry nodded, feeling grateful for Butterfly's company. I never knew the forest would be so beautiful. Just as he was enjoying the view, his frog hopped. Hello, little hedgehog, the frost said in a friendly tone. Are you there to explore too? Henry nodded eagerly. Yes, I want to see all the new places. Henry's eye widened up with excitement. Really? That sounds amazing. The frog happily agreed, and together the three new friends headed towards the hill. As they climbed, Henry discovered even more wonders of the forest. Finally, they reached the top of the hill. It's beautiful, Henry whispered. The butterfly and the frog nodded, sharing in his happiness. I saw a stream, a hill, and the whole forest from above. He exclaimed, "The world is so big, and there are so many things to see." The other hedgehogs listened in amazement, inspired by Henry's tale. Henry smiled, realizing his curiosity had not only brought him joy, but also inspired his friends. Every once in a while, Henry would go to another adventure, exploring new parts of the forest and learning more about the world. Henry understood that the world is full of wonders waiting to be discovered, and he was so glad that he had taken the first step to explore. The moral of the story is curiosity and discovery bring joy and wisdom. Exploring the world help us learn, grow, and find happiness. So kids, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching.
A basket of love. In a small and cozy village named Brook, there lived Taylor family. The family consisted of Mr. and Mrs. Taylor and their three children, Anna, aged 12, Liam, aged 10, and Daisy, who was 6. The Taylors were known for their kindness and generosity. They believed in helping others and always reminded their children, kindness is like a basket. You need to keep filling it, and it always have a room for more. The children were proud of their parents, but didn't always understand why this kind was important. Why do we have to help everyone, Mom? Anna asked once. Doesn't make more work for us? Mrs. Taylor smiled and said, because kindness makes the world a better place to live in, Anna. It is one thing that grows you and share it. One cold winter morning, Mrs. Taylor gave each of the child a small basket and said, today we are going to learn about kindness. Take these baskets, and every time you did something kind, you will add something to it. What will put in the basket? Liam asked, puzzled. Anything that represents kindness, a flower, a pebble, or even a note. The tailor replied, at the end of the day, we'll see how much of your baskets are full. Excited but a little unsure, the children took their basket and set off for the day. Anna decided to visit Mr. Jenkins, an elderly woman who lived next door. Mrs. Jenkins lived alone and struggled often carry grocery from the market. Anna knocked the door and said, good morning, Mrs. Jenkins. Do you need help today? Oh, thank you, dear, Mrs. Jenkins replied, smiling. Could you help me with fetch some wood for fireworks? Anna quickly collected the wood from the shed and stuck it neatly in the fireplace. Mrs. Jenkins handed her the small flower and said, thank you for your kindness. Meanwhile, Liam went to the park to play football with his friends. But on his way, a boy who was sitting alone on the beach, the book looked unhappy and sad. And what happened to your kite? Liam asked. It got stuck in a tree when I pulled it down in the door. A boy replied, looking downcast. Liam thought for a moment, I have an extra kite at home. Wait here, I'll bring it to you. The dream ran to home and grabbed his spare kite. Thank you so much, he said. Little Daisy loved animals and she often played with the stray cats and roamed the village. Mom, can I get this kitten some milk? Of course, my dear, Taylor said. Daisy poured some warm milk into the bowl and gently placed it near the kitchen. As the day ended, the family gathered around the fireplace to share their experience. Mrs. Taylor said, your baskets are full with kindness. Now let me help you something about magical. Mrs. Taylor picked up her own basket, which was empty. Today I didn't do anything with the basket, but I helped you to act of your kindness. Even though my basket is empty, I feel it's full because of the kindness I share. So kids, that's it for today's video. See you in the next video.